bryozoan infestation. In the dense shadows of a forgotten jungle, a ghostly figure moves between the trees. A magnificent white tiger, once the king of its domain, now a wretched shadow of its former glory. Its powerful frame is still covered in thick white fur, but something is deeply wrong. Its sight is marred by a grotesque honeycomb-like wound, an open network of hollowed-out flesh, seeping with infection. The sight is unbearable. What should be smooth, muscular skin has become a cavern of decay. But what's worse is that this is no ordinary wound. This isn't the aftermath of a fight. It's not a disease. It's not even something we would recognize as a normal parasite. No, this tiger is rotting while still alive. And the thing eating it? Something ancient? Something bizarre? Something that shouldn't even be inside a mammal. This is the horror of a bryozoan infestation. The unnatural intruder. Bryozoans, sometimes called moss animals, are creatures so alien to us that most people have never even heard of them. They belong to a strange, primitive group of colonial organisms, which usually live in the ocean or freshwater lakes, forming gelatinous mats, crusty corals, or bizarre, pulsing colonies. They aren't supposed to be inside land animals, let alone a tiger. And yet, here they are, digging tunnels into living flesh, spreading like an unnatural cancer, forming their signature honeycomb structures where once there was muscle, skin, and fur. How did they get inside this beast? How did something that belongs at the bottom of a swamp turn a mighty predator into a living corpse? A parasite that shouldn't exist. Bryozoans usually exist in peaceful, self-sustaining colonies. They live underwater, filtering microscopic food from the currents, building their coral-like structures over time. They are ancient, dating back to over 470 million years ago, surviving mass extinctions and unimaginable environmental changes. But sometimes nature gets confused. Sometimes things go terribly, terribly wrong. Imagine a microscopic larva of a bryozoan drifting through a stagnant swamp, looking for something to attach to: a rock, a piece of wood, maybe the shell of a turtle, but instead it finds an open wound. Maybe the tiger was injured in a fight. Maybe it had an old infection. Either way, the bryozoan latched on, mistaking this living, breathing animal for a perfect new home. And as it did what bryozoans always do, it grew. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 1,000. Within weeks, the tiger's wound became a thriving reef of living parasites, a colony of tiny creatures, reproducing at an uncontrollable rate, building their horrifying network of interconnected tubes. Inside the flesh of a living mammal, the rotten flesh hive. The horror doesn't end there. Bryozoans are masters of survival. They form gelatinous mats that hold moisture, perfect for breeding bacteria. The tiger's body, warm, wet, full of nutrients, became the perfect environment. And just like that, the infestation transformed from a wound into a hive. From the outside, it looks like a chunk of the tiger has been scooped out, leaving behind a spiraling, intricate pattern of tiny hollow chambers. But inside those holes, microscopic tentacles wave and pulse, catching floating debris, feasting on the tiger's own fluids, growing with each passing hour. And the worst part? The tiger is still alive. It feels everything. The itching, the crawling, the searing, gnawing pain of something digging inside it. But there's nothing it can do. Scratching won't stop it. Licking won't fix it. And the infestation has already fused with its flesh. This is no longer a wound. This is an ecosystem. Why doesn't the body fight back? Most parasites trigger an immune response. The body fights off invaders with swelling, pus, and fever. But bryozoans are different. They don't belong to the category of parasites in the traditional sense. They are colony builders. They don't attack the body. They replace it. And because they aren't technically bacteria or viruses, the immune system is confused. It doesn't know whether to fight or accept this new horror growing within. As a result, the tiger's body becomes a battleground where nothing is actually fighting back. The result? A slow, agonizing transformation into something not quite dead, but not quite alive. The final stage, as the bryozoans continue to spread, the tiger begins to lose function in the affected areas. The muscles waste away, the fur falls out, and the body becomes brittle. Soon, the colony expands beyond the wound, spreading through the bloodstream, reaching the internal organs. And then, well, the tiger stops being a tiger. The body still moves, the eyes still flicker, but by now, the creature is more bryozoan than feline. The white tiger, once a fearsome apex predator, is now something else entirely, a walking, breathing coral reef of living flesh. And when it finally dies, the bryozoans don't. No, they wait. If the body falls into water, the colony will continue. If scavengers arrive, the infestation might spread. A hyena that dares to feast on the corpse may unknowingly ingest microscopic larvae, bringing the nightmare into the next victim. For most, the idea of a living creature being slowly hollowed out by a colony of microscopic organisms is the stuff of nightmares. The bryozoan infestation we just explored is terrifying, alien, and disturbingly real, but as grotesque as that may be, it is far from the only horror nature has to offer. Because if you think a honeycomb of living flesh is bad, wait until you learn about what happens when the enemy isn't tiny creatures building inside you, but something far older, far wiser, and far more determined to take over entirely. When the decay stops being passive, when the body doesn't just rot, when something grows instead. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fungal takeover. Slow crawling death. Fungi are often seen as the humble decomposers of the world. We imagine harmless mushrooms sprouting from dead trees, soft mold creeping over forgotten bread. But fungi are more than that. Some of them don't wait for death. Some of them cause it. Unlike bacteria, unlike parasites, and unlike the microscopic colony builders of the bryozoan, fungi don't just infest. They invade. They send out creeping, root-like tendrils called hyphae, drilling deep into flesh, muscle, and even bone. They don't need an open wound to get inside. Some simply burst through the skin, forcing their way into the bloodstream, spreading like a rotting wildfire. Imagine a tiger, perhaps the same unfortunate beast from before, now suffering from a different, equally horrific fate. The bryozoan infestation had weakened it, leaving its body open to the next horror in line. A tiny fungal spore, too small to see, lands on its exposed flesh. It doesn't look like much, just a little speck of dust. But that dust is alive, and it has a goal. The hunger of the fungal world. Once inside, the fungus does something that should be impossible. It thinks, not in the way an animal does, not with nerves or a brain, but through something even older. A network of intelligent roots that feel, respond, and adapt. Fungi have been around for over 1 billion years, outliving the rise and fall of entire species, quietly evolving their own methods of survival. For the tiger, this means only one thing: it is now food. At first, the fungus grows invisibly, hidden beneath the surface. But as the days pass, something starts to happen. The tiger feels a deep, aching pain inside its muscles, like something is twisting and pulling from within. The skin begins to change. Small, circular sores appear, dry and cracked like brittle old leather. And then the growths begin. First, thin strands, like white filaments, begin pushing out of the wounds. Not muscle, but fungal roots, breaking through the flesh, groping towards the air. The tiger scratches and bites at them, tearing away the strange new growths. But it's no use. The more it scratches, the faster they grow back. The fungus has latched onto the nervous system, manipulating pain responses, hijacking the immune defenses. It begins to change the body, converting muscle into fungal tissue, replacing living cells with a spreading network of hyphae. It absorbs its host, transforming it from the inside out. And then, when it has had its fill, the true horror begins, the blooming of death. As the infection reaches its peak, the tiger slows down. Its movements become stiff, sluggish, unnatural. It starts wandering aimlessly, stumbling through the jungle as if lost inside its own body. And that's because, in many ways, it is. The fungus has taken control, like a marionette. The tiger's limbs move not by its own will, but by the fungal network now embedded deep within. The body still breathes, the heart still beats, but the mind is gone. And then, finally, the moment comes. The fungus bursts forth. Mushrooms, grotesque and alien, erupt from the tiger's spine, its ribs, even its eyes. They spread across its body like a grotesque garden, releasing millions of spores into the wind. Spores that will find new hosts, new victims. A cycle that will repeat again and again. The tiger is now nothing more than a walking spore factory, a mobile corpse, doomed to wander until its fungal master no longer needs